The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising, and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written to the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word that I too may go and do him homage." And after their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Does God anger you? Herod was very troubled, we read in the Gospel, by this idea of a Messiah encroaching on his land, on his territory. Sometimes God angers us. But at least if he angers us, it means we have some feelings, some emotions going on. Better than God boring you. Sometimes, many times, God may be boring to us. We really don't care whether he exists or not, and if he does, we just see him as someone who's out there in the sky, more than likely, who really isn't that concerned about my life. So, for many people, that's how it is. Are we involved with God? Do we have a desire to be involved with God? Or do we have a spiritual malaise, a spiritual indifference, an apathy towards God? Sometimes in Christianity, what can happen with time as we grow older, not maturing, but growing older, is that God, we feel, stifles us. That's how we may feel. Today's gospel is a story about a man and people who maybe had all those feelings. Herod was quite a character, not easy to live with. He was cruel, he was mean, it meant nothing to him to kill people, even his wife or children if need be. he was in charge and wanted to be in charge. And so when this story came about that there was a newborn king, a Messiah, he didn't know what to do. He must have been a very lonely, intimidated man. He was threatened by God. I suppose we can be threatened by God, especially when God disturbs us. Sometimes God asks us more than we want to give him. He disturbs us when he touches our hearts and asks us to go deeper into our faith. Oh, a lot of people tell me over the years, Father, I know my faith. I went to CCD. Or I know my faith. I'm a product of Catholic schools. You may have lost your faith in Catholic schools, I don't know. But Father, I know my faith. I went to Boston College, or I went to a Catholic university. Well, I don't know. I would hope that you discover your faith there, but see, faith isn't just an intellectual pursuit. What's great about the Magi in today's gospel, we know very little about them. We're not sure how many there were. We always assume 3 because there are 3 gifts that were presented: gold, frankincense, and myrrh, but they could have been 6, 7 of them. They came from Persia, according to tradition. So from Persia to Bethlehem was not an easy ride, especially in those days. They came by camel, dromedaries, we assume. And they may have been surrounded by a retinue of many men and women servants. They brought water and supplies and tents and foods. And it was not an easy journey, but they took it because they were very capable of not only intellectually encompassing what was happening, but there was something more. Their hearts were being led to this place. And they were astrologers by trade, so they knew the stars, they knew the heavens. They followed this particular star, which is historically accurate if you ever go back to those days and read about it. And it brought them to a manger. When they got there, when they arrived at the manger, they were overwhelmed by what they saw. Imagine traveling all those distances, those days, weeks, months, who knows. And when you arrive, you find a baby. Now, they could have been cynical and said, well, what's this have to do with this prophecy? Even though they were not Jewish, they were Gentiles. It's what this feast brings forth, that God reveals himself to all nations. Even though they were Gentiles, they were curious about Jewish tradition and Jewish readings. And so they more than likely read from the prophet Isaiah, the first reading that we proclaim today. It intrigued them. They wanted to find out who he was. What was this all about? And they even stop in to visit Herod and tell him that they have discovered something marvelous. They want to see him. They want to behold this king. Do we have a hunger for God? Do we have a hunger for God? Or do we think we know it all? Do we want to discover God more deeply? Or are we satisfied with what we know? There are so many ways that we can delve into God, into his majesty, into his glory. We can do it through Bible studies. We can do it through a variety of courses that we offer here at St. Michael's. We can do it through prayer when we have Eucharistic adoration. Just coming and spending time with Jesus and telling him, Jesus, reveal yourself to me. Not just to my mind, that's important, but reveal yourself to my heart. I want my heart to catch on fire. I want my heart to be transformed. That's what the newborn king does. He wants to excite us. He wants to renew us. He wants to make us into someone new. And yet, if we just sit there week after week and we think we know all that has to be known. If we never delve into God, it's the same thing with a person. It could be our wife, our children. At times we just assume that we know everything about them. And all of a sudden we discover that our children are perhaps proficient in music or in a certain sport, or they're good at articulating things that we never thought they could talk about. We discover a whole new facet to our children, or perhaps it's to our spouse. As we grow, we change, we become different. People change, it's part of life. Well, don't look at God the way you looked at him when you were a kid. He's constantly asking you to seek him out. You can never know too much of God. It was a great mystic, St. John of the Cross, he said, dig for Christ, keep digging for him. And I think of what happened with the Magi. They weren't intimidated by knowledge and by truth. They weren't intimidated by light. When they approached the light in the manger, or wherever they beheld Christ, the light was bright, but their eyes were able to adjust to that light. And the more it adjusted, the more they saw. And the more they saw, the more they were transformed. Isn't that what Christianity is about? Our being transformed, becoming a new creation. So today, as we celebrate this beautiful feast of the Epiphany, Christ, the light of the nations, don't extinguish that light. Don't cover it over. Seek him out. Don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid. Don't just disregard Christ. There's so much he wants to do in my life and in your life. And so as the beautiful hymn, Christmas hymn says, "Oh come, let us adore him."